Hello, everyone. Welcome to this final panel session on circuits that practice debate in languages other than English and also in different debating styles. I've got a wonderful panel here with me. Very grateful for all of your time today. So thank you very much for joining. I'm just going to hand over to you to introduce yourselves and I'll kind of then ask some questions. I'll kind of initially stick to an order, but then I might kind of switch it up. So on this occasion, if it's okay, I might start with Roy, then Meg, then Diego, then Tania, if that's okay. So just tell us a little bit about yourselves, your experience in debating, obviously what circuit you come from, and so on. That'd be really great.
Sure. Thanks, everyone. So my name is Roy Sholon. I have started debating around 10 plus years ago when I was still in high school. I'm from Israel. I've most of my life debated for the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, but now I am the coach for the Ben Gurion University in Beersheba in Israel. Over those 10 years, I've judged a bunch, I've debated a bunch. Notably, I was the 2019 ESL champion in Worlds, and I have also broken as a judge in multiple Euros and Worlds. I think that's mostly it. Israel mostly does BP. I don't know if people know that, so we don't really accept like those who do schools, which are usually in high school, the rest of the adult population just does BP. We don't really have any other form.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for that. Who was next? Meg?
Hello, everybody. My name is Meg Kandarpa. I'm a sophomore currently at Cornell. So I started debating roughly 4 years ago, maybe 3 in high school. I studied debate under the University of Rochester and Cornell, primarily in British parliamentary, but my field started off in American parliamentary, one of the 8,000 formats that the US circuit does follow. So I am from a North America / Eastern US, presumably. Notable experience is a little bit limited. I guess recently it's been US UDC breaks and not X breaks, but it's quarterfinalists and various women's tournaments and finaling there. So that's the hope right now.
Awesome, thanks very much. And Diego?
Hi, everyone. My name is Diego. I'm in debates in 2014, so it's been like 7 years of debate. How's my career of debate? I've been debating actively since 2014 to 2017. And then I became the coach of Universidad del Rosario, that is my institution in Colombia. And for me, it's like, well, it's been a great honor to be part of the speaking in English circuit, because we didn't have the contact before we started debating in English in 2016. And since then, it's been all about learning. As a debater, I unfortunately I just get to debate really late on my career, so I couldn't debate a lot. I won a regional tournament, and most recently I've been engaging in the English speaking circuit. I've been able to break in Thailand Wood, and yeah, basically it's that.
Awesome, thanks for that. And last but not least, Tania.
Yeah, hello guys. So I'm basically from Lahore, Pakistan, and I'm currently in my junior year at Kinnaird College. So I basically started sort of having an interest in debating back in like my A levels, and then I received some sort of coaching, and then I formally started debating in my university. So it has been like 2 years since I have been debating. So for as for like what roles I perform for my own society, I as a speaker, I represent my institute in like different tournaments, but also like I do a mentor the novice student, our novice speakers like from our society, in giving them like few content sessions on different topics, and then like also sort of doing a fellowship work for like training middle school children as well. And also like this is like I think ever since everything has gone online, this is like my first experience in terms of international tournaments and just like generally interacting with the international circuit. And I think it has been a very great journey so far. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks for that. So we'll launch into the first question then, and we'll just stick to the same order for this one, and then we'll mix up a little bit, as I said. So I'm conscious that obviously the situation is very different for all of you. I think, you know, the majority of you, most of this discussion will center around how you practice debate in languages other than English, and to some smaller extent, perhaps different styles. You know, I think most pertinently for Meg here, the question is largely one about reconciling so many different styles that the US circuit practices. Nonetheless, there are some commonalities about, you know, how to kind of prioritize the types of tournaments you do, for example, and where you kind of expend your energy and how you kind of practice debate. So I think there is some overlap. So with that in mind, and you've already, some of you have already touched on this in your introductions, but I'm hoping you can expand just a little bit on what the norm in your circuit is. For example, what is the balance between English speaking debate and debate in your local language? What are the styles that your circuit practices? And what are kind of like the major tournaments that your circuit sort of focuses on and prioritizes? Obviously, that then has some overlap with the previous questions, i.e., you know, is Worlds largely your main focus, or are there regional tournaments, or, you know, perhaps in your case, Diego, it's about, you know, Spanish Worlds. So I'm interested to kind of hear about where those kind of priorities currently lie. What is the status quo? So I'll start with you, Roy, if that's okay.
Sure. So obviously, the Israeli circuit is the only one in the world that has tournaments in Hebrew. That's to be expected. So we don't really have any tournaments abroad or anything like that that would be Hebrew, and that is something that is kept within our circle. In terms of the focus, so we usually look at it like in terms of like 2 semesters. So we're saying like in the first semester, we mostly focus on Hebrew. It also makes sense because this is where we have our freshers and coming in, and we obviously can start the freshers with English. That would be too intimidating. So definitely in the first part, we are doing like all Hebrew, basically. And then in the second part of the year, we gravitate more towards English. This is also the time where the regionals is. Euros is a lot more important for most Israelis than Worlds. It has a few reasons. I think the 2 main reasons is A, the fact that it is indeed in the end of the academic year for the people in Israel, which is very important because then they feel they have more time to practice specifically towards that tournament, while it's harder to do for Worlds. And the second thing is obviously the budgetary constraints. So Euros is always in Europe, which makes it a lot easier for Israelis to attend, unlike Worlds, which could be anywhere in the world, and therefore a lot more financially prohibitive for people in Israel. So this is like most of the I would say of how we run things. I would note, of course, that we have a few like official tournaments that the Israeli League has. So we have 2 of them which are in English. So they're supposed to be in English, one before Worlds and one before Euros, kind of like a Israeli prep in that sense. But the vast majority of the other tournaments are indeed done in Hebrew, both allowing for freshers to join in, but also allowing for people, you know, to fully exploit their native language and fully exploit their capabilities. I can say there are many, I think, fantastic Israeli debaters who never came to prominence on the international stand because it's more difficult for them to express their full abilities in English rather than in Hebrew. Finally, in terms of style, I would just say that, as I said, since we're part of the European circuit, we frankly only do BP, except for the period of time of schools where they do the World Schools format. However, we usually do try to accommodate also them. So many of the people who are actually on the national Israeli team in World Schools still come to BP tournaments and practice with BP societies to improve their own skills. But I don't think there has ever been like a serious schools tournament in Israel that is like meant for anyone who are not in high school.
Oh, thank you for that. I do have one very brief follow-up question, which is, so you spoke about the kind of Hebrew language debating being the kind of the focus in semester one. That's actually like, I guess, oddly the same in like Australia insofar as 3 versus 3 style is our focus in semester one, usually leading up to Australs, for example, and then we switch to BP in the lead up to Worlds. Obviously that's a bit upended though with everything that's happening with the changes following COVID. Is what I guess is happening in the circuit in response to that? Like there's obviously going to be a Worlds, you know, in a few months from now. So have you had to switch to English speaking debate a lot quicker than normal, I guess?
Well, in a sense, actually, it did the exact opposite. Now the fact that Worlds is so much closer to Euros just means that, in fact, we can be a lot freer about doing only Hebrew for the first semester and really focusing and drilling down the English as we reach the what is now Worlds plus Euros point in time. So,
okay, there you go. Awesome. Well, thanks for that. Well, now, Meg, I mean, I'm sure you could probably spend like an hour talking about like the 17 different styles that the US circuit has. But if you can tell us in kind of a, you know, a slightly more condensed version, I guess what are some of those different styles? I guess, yeah, noting the challenge of explaining that.
Sure. So I'll give you 2 answers. 1, what the different styles are, and then 2, the balance you strike within BP. I'll actually flip the order on them though, because as a debater, we always do that, I guess. Towards BP, I think primarily most of it's done in English. There is a Spanish league that's very, very like in depth, but is not as prominent as the English league on most teams. So they do go to Pan Ams, which is Pan Americans debate, and other regional tournaments. Cornell also hosts a few of them, but primarily most areas are done in English. Most schools that are able to go to US universities nationals or North American nationals, both are prominent either just like within the United States or within North America. A few European tournaments are done, but the number of schools that go to them are significantly limited because pricing to go fly towards Europe in the middle of the school year is incredibly costly. So that's probably more done for schools that have established, very long established BP teams. So that's the first answer. But to the probably more interesting and reason that I'm here, interesting answer is how many different styles there are. So I was counting before coming towards this. There actually are about 12 to 13. I will not bore you with all of them, but the US primarily does what we call speech and debate. So there's an entirely different competitive circuit called speech that's not dependent on you being able to be impromptu or being able to debate. And they have the ability for you to give like dinner speeches and whatnot. And that's primarily focused on those who don't have maybe the resources or access to want to always be competitive and just prepare their own motions and go with their own into it. Secondly, though, is the debate aspects. So the 4 most ones that I've seen in college are probably American Parliamentary Debate Association, which most schools do a combination of American Parliamentary and British Parliamentary because they've honed on almost the same skills that is relatively impromptu with a relatively amount the same, same amount of skills in regards to being able to give a strong prime minister, and so on and so forth, with stark differences. In American parliamentary, you create your emotions and you go for it. And then secondly is another style that people know as policy. This is one that usually clashes with British parliamentary because the expectation of debate is incredibly different because it's focused on you preparing a case and coming with extreme amounts of information and either like in response giving extreme amounts of information that is cited backwards or in what is known as critiques and being able to form plausible reasons to why the debate in itself is inaccessible and should not be debated upon that, which when brought into the BP space can provide sort of a conflict, but also a very intriguing nuance towards it. So I think for most debaters who have the ability to do both, schools probably provide both access points and they can choose between what competitions they go towards. But usually during the junior and senior year, debaters usually choose to specialize in one of them because the skills required to probably succeed to the top level. So either winning nationals or proceedingly breaking at worlds or whatever you declare to be the top most important thing for you requires some level of extreme amount of nuance. With the COVID world, it ends up you could do both or none. I think the British parliamentary experience for those who are primarily not in the East Coast, so either down south, like Mississippi and whatnot, or in the West Coast has been incredibly more accessible because the schools will pay like $8,000 for you to go fly across the world. So it's kind of been interesting to see the collision, but also beautiful harmony of different styles as they all try to take on what is weirdly known as British parliamentary.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I mean, yeah, I think it's, I guess from anyone outside the States, it's probably a bit of a, it's a peculiar thing to see so many styles. But the fact that they've all survived for so long and continue to operate suggests that people like, someone's got to like them and someone's got to enjoy them. So I guess giving people lots of different options to choose from is kind of cool. So that's good. Well, next, Diego, what about you? And I mean, I know just off the top of my head that there's lots of, I guess, different options between Spanish speaking debate and English speaking debate, but I'm curious for you to unpack that a bit more.
Well, just as an overview of our circuit is very young. We start working as a network like since 2011, so we are just like 10 years old as a circuit. Of course, there's countries that have a longer tradition in debate. For example, Spain, they have they have their own tradition. Maybe Chile in South America. But in general, we start just gathering together to debate since 2011. And as a result, in many cases, we only debate in the BP format because it's something that we like import for the English speaking circuit. And that's mainly what we do in all the countries. However, we usually do it in Spanish because there's a huge language barrier. In our countries, it's really hard to speak in English. We barely speak English. For example, I only speak English in debate. It's like 90% is 90% Spanish and 10% English. Regarding how much focus do we have on speaking in another language, and the result of that is that we focus mainly on our own tournaments. Our main tournament is Words in Spanish, which is called Semude, and it happened in July. And well, there's some difference in our circuit just to take into account. The first one is that we don't have so many tournaments. We usually have one or two, maybe three big regional tournaments. For example, we in my university we make a tournament in the University of Sebastian. I guess that's the most old regional tournament that we have, which is in Peru. And of course, we have Panams. Meg was talking about Panams, but actually, it's not that popular at least in Latin America. So the way that we prepare for tournaments is for semesters. In Latin America, we don't have seasons. Most of at least in Colombia, our academic calendar goes like for January to June and August to December. We're studying on that period. And we have the big tournaments in July for Semude and in December for Worlds. So that means that we can use our vacations to prepare. But the way we saw it is that we mainly focus for Worlds in Spanish. So our freshers, at least in Rosario University, our freshers start debating in August. We have our national tournament in December. They have their first experience of debate 6 months later after getting into the society, and then 1 year later we have the opportunity to go to Worlds in Spanish. So it's like 12 months of preparation, but it's more preparation inside the society debates because we don't have the resources or well, pandemic have changed that because we now have more virtual tournaments, but it's more working inside our debating societies, making debates between each other and getting prepared for it. But there are some debating societies in our region that also prepares for worlds, but there's just really few of them. We have Universidad Rosario, we have a couple of universities in Mexico, and hopefully, since this year, we will have some universities from Peru. And as a result, we don't have tournaments in English. We mainly focus. The only way to prepare is like going to other tournaments like Euros or watching videos that fortunately has been more available in later years, and making trainings inside our societies. We don't have tournaments. Yeah, and so just to sum it up, we mainly focus on words in Spanish. Occasionally we go to worlds, and our main style is BP.
Awesome, thanks for that. And I do have a very brief follow-up question, which is you mentioned increasing access because of online tournaments, and also just that there's not that many English-speaking tournaments. I wonder, has there been much interest for, I guess, for example, the local circuit attending like English debate competitions online hosted at from European or Iona societies, or indeed US societies, or do you think there's just still not the demand there, I guess?
Well, there still exist two main barriers. The
Mhm.
first one is about language. I guess most of Latin America people can speak in English. I guess it's the same in Spain, but the ones who can speak it or understand it mainly feels comfortable only reading it or hearing it, but not speaking. So for many people, there's problems of trust. They don't want to be involved in the circuit, and there's also this problem about our level of debate. We have a big gap with the level of debate in the English circuit because we are a young circuit. We don't have good judges. We don't have good coaches. So for many people, they feel afraid to participate in many cases, and that's a huge barrier. But there's also about budget, and even if virtual tournaments are low in price, there's still something that many students cannot afford. Unfortunately, we don't have in many cases the support of our universities. We've been in Universidad Rosario, we've been working for 10 years, and we have something guaranteed. That's the reason that we can participate, but in many cases our students cannot do it. And if you take into account that many of our students focus on BP debate tournaments are for middle class, and our purchasing power is not as great in other countries, there's a huge investment to pay like $50, 50 euros, or even 10 euros for people. So mainly people participate in Spanish virtual tournament because they're free, but there's this big gap. So I guess with those two barriers, many people has been involving. I know some debaters for Chile and Peru, uh, but well, Panama also, but for most of the cases we don't have that chance, and it's even more dramatic with our public debating universities because they don't have resources. Many of the way that they pay their universities because state funding, and they just don't have the resources, and they don't have all the tools, and also time difference is a big barrier. But for many of us it's not that big. Of course, I participate in Euros. I didn't mind to wake up at 1 a.m., but for some other people it's a big challenge.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Look, that makes a lot of sense, and I think it's very uh, what you said about the registration fees is very much a live conversation, particularly, you know, if
Yes.
Iona societies are charging, 50 euros a team for registration. It can make it difficult in many circumstances for people outside those circuits to attend. So that's a very valid point. Last but not least, Tania, I was really wanted to talk to a member of your society after I saw, I guess, the recent tournament to the Urdu language competition, and that just seems like something that your society and your circuit was very proud to do, and I thought that was really awesome. So I'm hoping, I guess, with that in mind, yeah, you can tell me a bit about, I guess, what debate looks like in your circuit.
Yeah. So before I tell that, so actually very interesting to see that like that a lot of other circuits also like prioritize their native language as well, because before this would interacting with international speakers, I used to actually think that every society does have this thing, like all the societies that are like all the countries that are most like ESL or EFL actually have this thing. But then I actually like talked to someone from Indian circuit, and they told how they don't exactly have any tournament which is in like Hindi language. They they only have English tournaments. And I was like, what? And so I was like, oh, so like we're like the only ones who actually like have proper Urdu tournaments, etc. So so basically in Pakistan, the thing actually looks more like we have our official language as English. So a lot like the medium of instruction is mostly English, but then there is Urdu as well. Side by side, we're studying both of the languages. So and that kind of like translates to how we do our tournaments as well. So we basically have like one tournament, but in that one tournament we have like separate English category and as well as in separate Urdu category. So people who want to go for like either of those categories can like, so both are like the tournament is happening actually simultaneously. So this is like basically having like two tournaments at like one time, because there's going to be separate breaks for like both of the categories. There's separate edge scores for both the categories and separate motions being set for both the categories, as well as so we have like, for example, we have separate breaks as in like a Urdu under 19 break, and in English under 19 break, and then Urdu Open breaks, and then English Open breaks. So basically sort of because we don't exactly have a lot of universities who actually like participate, but then we also have like a lot of schools to cater to, because there's like plenty of schools in Pakistan. So and for that very reason we have this U19 category, so that they can actually so that they don't have to exactly compete with the university speakers, and also like be able to like win trophies for their own like institute, etc. So I think yeah, so in terms of like format, I think we go with I think it's like up to the institute how they want to go about it. So BP, so like we also have Urdu in BP as well, like the way my society does it. It's like English in BP as well, English category, and Urdu in BP as well. And there are some other institutes that do it in Asians, like English in Asians, and then Urdu in Asians as well. So but also I think there has been for a past few years there was a lot of discourse on this idea that like how Urdu circuit should actually be getting the same rep as the English circuit does, because I feel that because this was something that had been happening for a very long time, that the English circuit used to get like a lot of attention, and like a lot they're the ones that are getting either like most of the funding as well, even at times. I was not exactly a part of that circuit. I have spoken a few Urdu tournaments, and then I realized that yeah, like this is more fun as well, and like more banter and like in your own native language as well. So, like it's kind of interesting as well when you do it in Urdu. But also when our society this year did our intras for our novice speakers, what we did was that we kept it bilingual. So we did not segregate into like different into like Urdu or English, because we felt that most of these are like literally novice speakers who have never actually debated before, and for them to actually be able to explore what language they are more comfortable in, or what kind of circuit they want to go into, because the Urdu and English circuit are like completely two different things in Pakistan. So we felt that the kids should be able to like explore what circuit they actually want to go for, or what they are actually comfortable in. And also we had it in BP because it's like easier to find one person to pair up with than finding two people to for forming an Asian team. So like it's just more easier. And just generally, I think in Pakistan we have Asians format being followed, and also BP, but also like we have open tournaments of schools where like WSDC format is being used, but they're open to university students as well. So those are also some of the tournaments that we have also participated in, being university students. And I think as far as like majors are concerned, we have been in I think before online, this whole online thing, I'm not very, if I'm not wrong, I think people didn't exactly go to Australs or ABP, but now Malaysia ABP, etc. But now I think they have been able to because of this whole online transition. But before that, I think UADC and WDC were definitely one of one of the major tournaments that people actually used to go for. Like universities definitely used to like take out funding, like especially for these tournaments, so that like students can actually take part in them.
Awesome, thank you for that. That's very insightful, and thanks everyone for sharing. I'm going to go to the next question now, and for this one, I might just go Meg, Roy, Tania, and Diego in that order. So pretty simple question, and again, some of you have already kind of hinted at some of the challenges and opportunities in the previous discussion. But I'm just wondering if there's anything else that you want to outline in terms of what are some of the challenges balancing debate in the, might be various languages or styles in your circuits, but also what do you see as some of the advantages or opportunities of doing that? What I guess is, what is good about it? So I'll start with Meg.
So I think that a challenge that probably faced is, as I said beforehand, both styles or multiple styles are measured on so many different standards. So a student who is exceptional at policy might critically be like underwhelming in British parliamentary of no recourse of their own, but they're just really used to the support mechanisms they had beforehand. Also, it's notable to recognize that British parliamentary or the WSDC format is not as prevalent in US high schools as it was anywhere else. Personally was surprised that something about British was actually being showcased in America with that like random Americans turning around and taunting like the US Patriot flag. So it's a lot about that. So I think that the challenges are two things. One, most schools either have a lack or an independent BP debate tournaments while having coach funded and like very strongly like prehistoric policy and APTA tournaments or APTA schools. So the resource distribution can be significantly hampered. So for students who want to excel, it's kind of a jump into the ocean and figure out if you can sink or swim kind of narrative. So that probably is a challenge that like a lot of people face. So it's really hard to establish yourself as a up and coming BP debate tournament speaker, which I think has radically been shifting since. But an advantage that I think is not noted by most people is a few things. One, I think the number of people who want to debate on whole in America gets to be significantly larger because the aggregate wants to do something in debate, and you probably can like, I don't know, throw something at a wall, you're gonna find something that you want to do. So there's just more people who encouraged in debate and aren't just like are doing whatever they want to, which is beneficial. But secondly, I think that the circuit has been making active movements to kind of embrace both sides. So I think that what began as mostly, I'd use the word hostility, but I think just like a lack of understanding of circuits and the cross intersectionality you can have has severely changed given the pandemic, one, but two, I think just over the years as debaters can like succeed incredibly at both. Notable examples existed around most of like the US who are able to say, I'm really good at doing APTA and BP. So that probably means one, the level of, I would phrase it as kind of technicality has radically shifted. So debaters don't have to be the extreme 17 points of mechanism, 84 mechanisms of weighing, and some like really cool introduction, but can now do like combinations between that and maybe some that's more rhetorically based and honing in from like policy metrics or being able to run principles that symmetrically look like critiques and just being able to kind of embrace what would say is a much more holistic and approachable and accessible format in the US. Gets confusing at all times. I mean, the trade-offs are really weird, but we're becoming a one loving family, I presume.
No, that's really nice. That's, I think, a very positive story. And to be honest, it has a lot of similarities with my own circuit. And I've largely felt that a lot of the strength of the Australasian circuit is the balance between BP and 3 verse 3. They kind of are very similar, but they do teach you somewhat different things, and they I think the skills are very much complementary. So that's really great to hear. So next to Roy, what about in Israel? What do you think some of the challenges and advantages are?
Yeah, so I wouldn't refer to different styles because, as I said, we don't have much of those, but I would discuss different languages. So as I said, definitely part of the problem is that I think a lot of people in Israel, and probably true, I think, in all ESL countries, they are somewhat afraid of speaking English. The way most of us, know English is from movies and TV and people who are always, very much proficient in languages. So it's very easy to feel that like even if your English is good enough, it's easy to feel like it isn't. So I think this is probably the a very big challenge. It's definitely also true for again for our freshers. So once we start telling them that they would need to start debating in English, there are many people who are again talented debaters who would just say, no, we wouldn't do that. That's way too scary. I can barely do it in Hebrew. I wouldn't dare try to do it in English. But again, you need to push them a bit. And we usually do that, right? Like I think at some point you realize that like everyone has been through this phase and now it's your turn and it's not that bad and you can practice and it would be okay. In terms of the benefits, so I think there's a few benefits to the fact that you would have at some point to do it in both languages. So one of I think the major benefits in debating in English is that you would almost by definition would have to debate non-Israeli topics. And Israel is a small and rather self-focused country. We have quite a lot of stuff going on. And therefore, it's very easy to forget that there is a whole wide world out there. And you might want to ask yourself what's going on there as well. And like, what are issues that other people in the world care about. It's also, it's a good way when you're thinking, if you want, specifically when we're talking about like BP. So for example, when you're talking about giving a model for a policy debate, it's very good that you don't only have the Israeli way of doing things in mind, because many times Israel has terrible models, and if you're aware of things that are happening in other places in the world, it might be easier for you to find such models, right? So I think this is a very, very good benefit of the fact that you would have to debate in both languages and the way it would improve. There's one more thing that it's kind of I think a double-edged sword, because I know the Israeli circuit has become it was always quite good, but I think it became very, very good in recent years. And in a sense, we have I think started influencing the way that other circuits conduct themselves and the way they debate. And I think that to an extent, it's good for us that other people are adopting our style, and in this sense also are more appreciative of the Israeli style of debating. But I do believe that at least in the past, people were also very much, they like to go out and see other styles. So I know that there are certain very prominent Israeli debaters that have in fact suggested that maybe we would try to have a 3 versus 3 tournament in Israel, exactly because it might be able to push us to a different style than the Israeli style, which is very, very much BP focused, very much about like, strategizing and framing and stuff that are very, very useful in BP. But perhaps if we were to try other styles, it would also focus us on those types of things that would in fact better us. And at least even if not like, objectively better, at least it would inspire us to do things differently. So I think those are, I think that's mostly what I
have. Thanks for that. And yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to me that those discussions are happening about 3 versus 3 style and whatnot. I mean, I would certainly encourage it, but I think it's definitely true what you've said about much of the world now emulating Israeli debating, given how successful Israel has been on the world debating circuit. So yeah, for sure. Tania, next, what do you think some of the, I guess, the key challenges and advantages are in your circuit?
So yeah, I do agree with Roy in terms of like how the biases do exist, or in terms of like the kind of exposure you have and like the kind of then those translate into the kind of argument you're also making. So like a lot of things that we had to like maybe like sort of like brainwash, like tell people to like not make those arguments in the international circuit or even like any place at all, because those are like sort of either like very problematic arguments or just something that's either like very, very factually untrue and something that like just came out from like someone like just told them and like they just like carried it forward with them and like taking it into arguments as well. So yeah, like this is like one thing that you have to like constantly do for people. But also I felt that most of the challenges that like my circuit faces is like something that we saw in the online transition as well. So like a lot of people did benefit from it, and we were able to like adapt to it, but a lot of people became sort of absent from the entire circuit, like basically like literally just stopped speaking, or literally stopped being a part of the circuit as a whole, where and even if some people did sort of had to transition from like being Urdu speakers to being English speakers, the challenge then still remain in like the idea that like I have like 7 minutes. Will I be able to like and make the judge understand whatever I'm trying to say in the same way as probably an EPL speaker would be able to do, or someone who has had like a lot more like experience in speaking in that particular language. So I think economy of words is something that I've like observed in like all of this time, and like have felt that is something that's very very important, but is also something that is not possible for someone who is not exactly fluent in that language as well. Because like for me to actually be able to use economy of words effectively, I need to be like very very fluent in English, or I just need to like be able to like either like even if I'm like having like regular discourse with other people, I should probably be speaking in that particular language, so I know that like there are like certain things that I can say in like maybe like shorter amount of words, and like and it's still like and it's still perfectly okay. So I think these are some of the problems that people do face, like in terms of like where they feel that they have like they are probably analyzing arguments, but they're not exactly analyzing them. They're just like sort of still trying to understand how to like probably translate those arguments into English, and making the judge probably understand them. So I think one of the issues was this that probably my circuit, or probably like a lot of people actually face. But even like if that does get catered to, I still think that like the analysis and the like better phrasing of arguments is still something that a lot of people still like actually kind of aren't like actually able to do, and do feel that there are other people who are able to do better phrasing for them. And I feel that like maybe at times this kind of like disincentivizes them as well, where they are like sort of like maybe like debating as a whole is not for them, or maybe just thinking that like maybe let's just like wait for like the online thing to go away, and for like Urdu tournaments to come back, so that we can like start speaking again in our language, because it's so much more easier. So I think this is like one of the issues that I think people did face, and like a lot of people did stop like speaking, and like we just thought like everyone is just gone from the circuit all of a sudden. And I think the other issue is obviously the flow of your speeches, where like your so my even my case preps, even even though I've been like speaking in English, and despite that, my case prep is either bilingual or in Urdu, which means that I don't really do that anymore. But like I would probably be like translating a lot of that stuff into like English, and then like probably speaking that. But also even like when you are an Urdu speaker and going into an English circuit, you probably have to like literally translate your entire speeches, or your entire style into another language, where it means that your flow is obviously going to break, and you're obviously like thinking a lot, or like probably not able to think that spontaneously as you would in your either native language, or the language you're actually comfortable in. So I think this is like one of the issues that people probably like face a lot, where they are like scared that this skills might not exactly might get trusted when they're not speaking, so they just like get into this peer pressure of speaking, but then they just realize that they're not even like getting that flow from their speeches, and they're not even as effective as speakers as they were when they were speaking Urdu, or like or when they were like speaking in their like local circuit. But also the like in terms of advantages, we did see that like even in my own society, I saw that some of my seniors who were actually bilingual speakers were actually able to do a lot better, like in terms of like either they were like winning tournaments like in both the languages, like both tournaments of both the languages, or just like generally being like being better debaters in that case. So I think it sort of still adds to some extent for these people. But also I think on a lighter note, if you're on a Zoom call and you're like probably case prepping on another like on another like app, even if you get unmuted, the other person can't probably understand what you're saying or like whatever you're case prepping about. Like that actually still saves you like a lot from a lot of trouble. But yeah, I do think that I think a lot of people do say that being a bilingual speaker does mean that like having a lot of access to like different kinds of culture, but also like just generally being able to think about different ideas and think about more ideas in diverse forms of ways, which might not be possible for probably like a person who only speaks one language or like someone who's an EPL speaker perhaps. So yeah, I do think like it has both pros and cons on its own.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. And the not being overheard when you're prepping is quite a funny reflection. And I've definitely heard the comment about economy of kind of words reflected a few times in training. And I do just want to give a cheeky plug that Tin did a very great session the other day on just those sorts of issues. So I do encourage people to go check it out when it's eventually uploaded. So it should hopefully be soon. But last but not least, Diego, what about from your perspective?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I already speak about some barriers. I already speak about money, language, and maybe the gap in competitive terms. But I want to focus in another one that is the consequence of isolationism, that I would like to call it like that, because the result of mainly debating in Spanish is that we mainly get feedback about the way that we do it. And at least at the beginning of the circuit, like for 2011, at least to 2015, we have our like our own way to debate in BP. When I get in debate, which was in 2014, I just learned the way that we do it in Spanish. But when I have my first opportunity to debate in wars, like it was in Thessaloniki in 2016, it was a whole different world. It's just literally different. We only share the format, but the way that we interpret the rules, we make arguments, we consider something as more persuasive that other was extremely different. And that was the result of many things. The first one is that the people that taught debate are just like old teachers that know about logic and know about other fields of experience, and the result of that was that the circuit was changing completely. For example, in Spain they have their own tradition and they were valuing more rhetoric. For example, in other circuits, they value using arguments in a vacuum. So it was something about logic, and it was really weird. And the result of that is when we understand the English speaking circuit and we try to make it more universal, because that's the whole deal of speaking on the same format, to be able to share your knowledge and to debate with people of another countries. There's some tendencies of resistance. So some people in our circle call the idea of sharing ideas or unifying criteria like epistemic colonialism. As a result, some people are really stubborn to think that no, that's not the way that you're doing it. You're only using English slang like engagement and comparative, but you're not doing anything value for the circuit. And there's still that, I guess that's one of the main difficulties of our circuit, because that's the result of speaking in another language. And the people who is fortunate enough to be able to participate in both circuits is like just trying to close the gap. But the advantage of getting some balance, because there's some balance in some societies, like my society in Rosario, and also the debate society from Antonio and Javier, who were one of the most successful debaters in Spanish and English, are that in some sort of a way we becoming ambassadors for debate. So our circuit is new. We don't have good coaches. We don't have many things that can make us good debaters. Among other reasons, is because we don't have school circuits. We only learn to debate our first semesters of university, and it's kind of a sad, because when we learn to debate, we cannot debate anymore because we have to get our degrees and continue with our life. And when we have that balance, we start to sharing this knowledge and making progress the circuit. For example, We started debating in English in 2016. The first time that an Spain team was to Wars was Antonio Javeri was in 2017. And the result of that is that as we used to be the most competitive teams in our circuits, we start to spread the rules and spread the knowledge that we get in the other circuits, and we constantly been improving and making the English circuit more similar to the Spanish circuit, and we've been able to democratize some strategies, because at this point it's fair to say that the better teams in the Spanish circuit are the ones that are successful on the English circuit. And it's kind of a sad, because it's not like based on pure merit, but just a privilege of access. But we are trying to share that and spread that, and we're just building. We have to be patient, but we're trying to do that.
Well, that's a really, I think, a positive kind of way to frame it. It's certainly an upward trajectory, and one that's very noticeable, I think, to the international debating community. Well, look, in the interest of the time, I'm going to combine these last two questions. And the order I might ask is, I might go Tania, Meg, Diego, and finally Roy. So the two questions, and you can focus on both, or you can focus on the question that you want to focus more on, or whatever works for you, I don't mind. But the questions I have to kind of wrap up are, firstly, and again, some of you have already kind of touched on some of these things. The first is, are there any changes you would like to see made in your circuit? That could be a different balance of debate in different languages or styles. It could be more of a shift to different majors. It could be more cross-circuit collaboration, or it could be anything. So I'm curious, what change, if any, would you like to see? And or the second question, if there's one thing that you'd want debaters from other circuits to know about yours, and any final takeaways, what would they be? So again, I might start with Tania.
Okay, so I think firstly, in terms of like whether we would like want more balance or not, I would definitely want that, because like seeing that a lot of people aren't able to speak at all because of this, like something that's like sort of disheartening. And I would definitely want that more people actually like also like basically, since also my society in particular has been able to get a lot of memberships because of this whole quarantine thing, because a lot of people like actually prefer having like online tournaments than having to go to a physical one, and then like spending entire weekends and like proper days like and like till night actually being there at a tournament is like much harder as a girl as well, for a lot of people from my society. So which means that we have a bigger society now, and we have like a lot of diverse people that we need to cater to, which means that at the end of the day there are going to be like a lot of people who are like specialized Urdu speakers, and I would definitely want them to not waste their potential on speaking English tournaments, even if just because they have to and just because they don't have another option. I would definitely want them to actually go and like speak Urdu tournaments more and more, which is why also we like at Kinnaird Urdu Open as well, even though like normally we don't allow our own teams to participate, but this time we are doing so because this is like the first time we are like after this online thing, this is the first Urdu Open tournament that's happening, and it would be very bad to like not let them participate and compete like with all the other teams as well. So we are like letting them actually take part in it as well. And secondly, I think with regards to majors, I think in generally in Pakistan, the thing is that we don't like a lot of universities don't exactly get to go to majors in generally because of the kind of like funding that is required, but also maybe like a lot of other logistical reasons that go about it. Even like the idea that like Belgrade is going to happen like 2022, but like most of us are like probably silent about it because we know that like a trip to Europe is going to cost a lot. So we're just like sort of like hoping that it happens, but like don't exactly know that whether it will happen or not. But I think would definitely want that like now that like things are like sort of are online for a while, would definitely want that my university or like every other university as well gets to take part in like speak as many majors as they can, and would love to like also speak Australs this time, which we didn't last time because of our finals happening and something like all of these stupid like things happening, and also missing out on UADC as well because of our finals happening, which is just like sad altogether. So yeah, we definitely want that we don't exactly miss that opportunity whenever it comes now, even if we have finals. So yeah, and like I think yeah, also. On part of like more circuit like collaboration with different kinds of circuit, we are already doing that in terms of like the Urdu Open being open to like all South Asian debaters, because thanks to yours pop posting, like one of your pop posting polls where they asked about like what languages do people actually speak or understand. There were a lot of people who were voting for Urdu and they weren't from our circle, like they weren't from Pakistan. We were like, oh, like so like maybe probably like Indians or like Bangladeshis do understand, or like even Nepalis, they do understand Urdu, or like even if they like sort of like Urdu and Hindi like do are like sort of same similar languages, if a normal person is speaking them and not very like pure languages they're pure versions. So we felt that we can actually like extend that Urdu Open invitation to not just Pakistani teams but also to like South Asian teams, which is also why we like asked around them as well whether they think it would be a good idea, and a lot of people actually said that they would love to be like a part of the CAP as well. And but we do have like Indian speakers who will be a part of the CAP along with Pakistani speakers. So I think like we would definitely want like more collaborations like these, or like just uh, having things that are not exactly a norm but like in the international circuit, and making them a norm so that like everyone can enjoy whatever we have within our circuit, and like sort of like extend that to like other people as well. So just generally from like my side, I think like we are like we have like a very small circuit in terms of like very few varsities are actually there in Pakistan that are like actively speaking. So I think for us to like be able to like extend whatever we are, whatever the kind of things we do, as well as adapting to the international circuit, is something that's very important and something that we are actually trying to do as well. And we just generally try to make sure that there are more women speakers, because we have seen that in our circuit it has been a male dominated one. So we have like tried different kinds of incentives where we try like having like fee waivers for women speakers so that they are able to speak. And like if this is like one barrier that is like not letting them speak, this shouldn't be the case. And especially when we know that being in all women university, we should be like the most understanding ones. But also like just generally I think that did help in like a lot of other universities realizing as well that they need to like carry on the same things as well, so that we have like more diverse circuit just generally. So I think we are probably going towards like a better doing a lot better, or at least being trying to be more diverse, I think, which is going to be a good thing and would definitely do so in the future as well.
Awesome, thanks for that. That's a very nice kind of way to, I think, summarize that. And I very much hope you are able to attend Australs in UADC this year, and definitely pop posting, proving its value 10 times over, I think. I'll go to Meg next. Any changes you'd like to see, and I guess key takeaways, things that you would like people to know about your circuit.
So I'm about to open a can of worms, but close it very quickly, which I think that is with the numerous amounts of styles that exist, the equilibrium of judging and equilibrium of how you determine speaks or what is to be rhetorically persuasive is incredibly hard to face. I think that with the pandemic, and as we get a lot more European judges who are able to enter and judge US UDCs, for example, or judge other local tournaments, it's been a very nice distinguisher to recognize like panelists turning around and being like, the panelists say that this was not a critique, and not under like having a questionable force of this interest towards what is the correct way to adjudicate a British parliamentary round, which I think is a very open-ended question. So I think that the circuit as a whole is trying to rectify probably a good harmony between that without turning around and saying that one entire format is invalid or incorrect, or without saying that you punish those or penalize those who've been only primarily focused in British parliamentary by having them being judged by someone who doesn't fully understand the nuances that they're expected to do so. So I think that the circuit as a whole is trying to take active measures to do so. This comes in very intriguing but baseline setting judge tests. This comes in, I don't know, just kind of increasing the information access you have towards those who want to engage in British parliamentary, or just a total more allowance of teams around the entire United States to be able to enter where I would say the hub of British parliamentary usually exists, which is the East Coast. So allowing Western coasts and Eastern coasts to kind of compete on the same formats and be predominantly judged through trial and error through most American and sadly European judges that we coerced to come join us for a very fun, eventful weekend and funny conversations. So I think that's the biggest thing the circuit has to work on, right? Because it ends up becoming really just depressing for those who have the desire to do exceptionally well and turn around and go, wow, in X round I received X amount of marks, which makes me feel like I'm a good speaker or not a good speaker, and then isolating from the British parliamentary circuit, or saying that it's incredibly not for them, or demonizing the ones who judge them by saying policy isn't it. So I think that's probably the biggest problem, but I think we're working towards it with a lot of more speakers recognizing what's the best way to do so, and a lot of members who are figureheads in the British parliamentary and American parliamentary circuits kind of actively promoting narratives that support both of them. So that's the thing that I think that the circuit needs to work on, and I think that there's a 15-hour conversation you can have about it, but I think it's beginning to have prevalence in places, which is critical. Secondly, towards what I think the circuit should recognize is probably that patience, right? I think that my heart goes out to all the European debaters or judges who come up and go, this West Coast debater just told me that I wasn't rhetorically persuasive, and therefore, what are they on, and what would I be expected of? Because it's an active double burden that I recognize very clearly you as a speaker should not technically have to face. You as a speaker, I think in any tournament, deserve the best judging that you can possibly get, and that is a job that you are freely to recommend. But I think that as a circuit, even though it's a lot of fun to poke at the US, and I poke at the US because why do we have 17 circuits and why is one of them dinner parties? Even I don't have an answer for you. But I think just allowing more a freer space, and I think that most of the world is, to allow those who just want to explore and say dumb things like, I don't know, have a 2AC and call the DPM a 2AC and ask just cross-examination, but allow for that space to happen, because sooner or later it will occur. And I think that once you have it, your circuit just become a lot more interesting, and it won't just be Americans talking about American politics as Americans usually do. So we're getting there. I think that everyone can flag it there. I just think that in the upcoming years, after the pandemic, presumably, because this is a flashpoint for a lot of schools to just get as much access towards UADC or Uhuru Worlds or Doxbridge 7.77 or whatever we're on at the moment, and to wherever we'll end by the end of the semester. So I think it's just going to be a whirlwind from there.
I think that's a very wise way to summarize it. And as you said, people deserve quality judging, but at the end of the day, people coming from different circuits are most likely just different styles are most likely just doing their best, and patience is is a good message. What about you, Diego, in terms of things you'd like to see change and things you'd like people to know about your circuit?
Well, about things to change, I guess we have to focus in greater exposure to words in English, because right now we have 3 or 4 debating societies who only participate in this tournament, and we have 17, 80 societies that make our circuit, and is 95% of our circuit doesn't participate in here. And it's not just for the sake of participation, but it's because I guess it will make more quickly the professionalization of debating. And I'm just going to tell how that's work. In Latin America, people don't know how to debate until they reach university. They learn to debate throughout their career, and when they become good speakers, they are in their final year. So when we need good judges that are probably this well experienced debater, they prefer to debate rather than judge. And in our circuit, our judges are mainly novice, because the way that we work is like the best debaters are going to be competing, representing on our universities, but the ones who didn't get the process, or get the chance to get the slot to participate, are going as judges. And it's like 90% of our judges are novice, and the result of that is, we cannot learn without good judges. Many oral educations are not good, and if we have the exposure to the words, I guess the professionalization of our debaters are not going to be 4 years. It's going to be 1 or 2 years, and we are going to have the time for having these good judges improving the circuit. We don't have that right now, and we cannot use the methods that in your circuit use, because we cannot, for example, pay to the judges, because we cannot charge for tournaments because people won't participate, and people usually cannot get involved in the wars of debating after they get their degree, because they have to work. And just it's really important to have more exposure to the circuit, because it also gives time to the people in universities to make volunteer work for creating the circuit in schools. So on that side, I guess that. But on the other side, there's equity issues, no? Because Latin America is really a conservative society. We really have problems with gender and treating of minorities, sexual and identity minorities. And just to be fair, we are a really progressive bubble that we respect and empower women and empower people of LGBTV communities and indigenous people, but it's a small bubble. And I guess if we manage to, spread debate, where we're going to be able to give these people the tools to think. You don't have to be ashamed of your identity. You actually have the opportunity to be more empowered. And I guess just like these trickle down effects of better judges and more inclusion, it can happen if we have a greater focus on words in English. And just to give final thoughts, as a circuit exists, I know that we have this group in Facebook that is called Latin American and Caribbean Circuit. It's not quite used because most of the people speak Spanish and they don't watch that group, but we exist. We're connected most with the global health crisis. Um, we are a young circuit, and we would really love to have that more resources to learn, because the only chance to learn for us is like participating, because most of the great debaters doesn't consent to record the debates, so we cannot watch them. And if I cannot watch, if I cannot present this to the most of the people, they're gonna be thinking that we are speaking of epistemic colonialism or some things weird that are not getting, not making improve our circuit. And we have a great debaters. Maybe in 1 or 2 years we'll be able to, for the first time, winning an EFL category. We are working on it. Maybe in 1 or 2 years we're gonna do it, and maybe in 10 or 15 years we're gonna become something as strong as Israel and the Balkanic countries, which are of course very inspiring for us, because we know that they, in some part of their trajectory, they were suffering the same problems as us, but it's really motivating for us that have these role models and try to become like them.
Well, that's a very lovely way to wrap that up, I think, and a very nice segue into your thoughts, Roy. So to conclude this panel, what are your final thoughts in terms of things you'd like to see change, if anything, and what you'd like people to know about the Israeli circuit?
So I maybe I'm old-fashioned. I don't really see a lot of things that need to be changed in the Israeli circuit. I think there's a lot of stuff that are done pretty well. I can think of like very small things. For example, there was a big discussion on how much do we allow, let's say, opportunities to people who are not as experienced in debate, because as some of you may know, people in the Israeli circuit stay for a very long time. So 10 years is a lot for even the Israeli circuit, but it's very common that people debate for 4 or 5 years. it's very common. So there was a discussion, for example, on how we allow more like fresh blood in and so on. But I don't think there's much about that. I would, however, want to address 2 points that I think are important about what the Israeli circuit does, and I know that other circuits that have recently seen a lot of growth are doing as well. So I think those are 2 things that are very crucial for all circuits, which is A, adjudication, and B, coaching. So there's not a lot to say about coaching, but just it's important to note, for example, in Israel, there is literally not a single society that does not have a coach. So the idea is that if you're a society once you have a coach. This is like how people view it, and you're not a real society if you don't have a coach. And the reason is that people do not see debate as something that could be attained without having someone who would teach you. It's something that needs to be taught. It's something that needs to be mastered. You can choose the level of involvement and how much you want to get better, but it is not something you can assume people to pick up just from watching others and like, you know, reading online or seeing a few workshops. Like, it's something that needs to be taught in like the old-fashioned way, with a curriculum and so on. So this is, and I think this is very, very crucial because again, even for as I said, there are Israeli societies that don't do as well as others, but even there you could very much see the progress made by people when they start and how they very meticulously have learned their material and made the progress, at least for themselves. So this is something that I think is very crucial. And again, I do realize that Israel is very privileged in the sense that it's a very small country, and in a sense it's rather tightly integrated. So you can have people who have already graduated, who are like, they're adults, they have jobs, some of them have kids, and still they can afford themselves to go and coach, like, once a week a certain society. So it's definitely a privilege, but I think it's something that's very important to put in. I would note, by the way, I know that Diego is the coach of Rosario. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Rosario is, at least to my knowledge, one of the best societies in the whole of Latin America. And I think that's probably due to Diego's work. So kudos on that. But the second thing I would say is about adjudication. And this is, I think, something that is more unique to the Israeli circuit, but it's very important. What Diego just said about how the novices are the one judging, this is, I guess, like unthinkable. Like the idea that if you're the best debater, you would go to debate rather than go to judge is something that's ridiculous, because then you would get judged by people who don't know debate as well as you. So their judgment would be meaningless in that sense. So in Israel, it is a given that the best people in debate are the one who are doing the judging. And this is how it would always be. And if in my, for example, society, if I would know that I, for example, am unable to judge, I would always take the best debater and have them judge and not debate in this round, as far as I'm able. Now, I'm not saying that debating and judging skills are the same. There are definitely people who are like great judges and not as good in debating, but I'm saying that as far as those are the same people, definitely we push them towards adjudication. And in fact, in Israel, we have a system. So in order to push people to adjudicate, first of all, we have our own internal ranking system. So you could be like a W1, W2, W3, C1, C2. So we have like our own ranking system within the Israeli circuit, and people, they want to climb up the ladder of judging, and that pushes them, I think, very strongly towards making the effort and going out to judge in tournaments rather than just going out to debate. And it's determined by how many breaks you got and so forth. So this is, I think, very, very important. And also when we are allocating teams for our tournaments. So you have a cap that is based on that. So if you are a society that currently doesn't have enough good judges, you would have no choice but to start sending your debaters out to judge, and they would get experience. Otherwise, you simply won't be allocated as many teams as you'd like for tournaments. So we are making this very, very active effort to make sure that the best people get to judge. And, you know, sometimes it works more, sometimes it works less. I won't deny that we do have the privilege of relying on a lot of, like, you know, dinos who come back to judge and you know, put in the work, but it's definitely, I think, one of the things that helped the Israeli circuit to excel.
Yeah, that's, I mean, that is, I think, certainly you know, model that where possible. It's you know, obviously varying levels of applicability, but I think there's definitely some good lessons to take from that. So, well, with that in mind, thank you all for what has been a very insightful discussion. I'm sure many people will find it exceptionally informative and useful. Whilst there are obviously many differences between your respective circuits, I think there's certainly a lot of commonalities and lessons that can be shared. So once again, thank you very much for your time. So I'm going to stop the